Hi there, I am Carol, Crafty Grandma, and today we are going to finish up our exploding square quilt that we've been working on. We've got the top completed. It's all pieced together and nice and pretty, but we know that a quilt is not complete until it is actually quilted. So we need to put together a backing, a batting, and the top, and then put a binding on it, and of course we always have to put a label on the end. So that's what we're going to do today. I have a dark green thread that I'm going to use for my quilting, and I was told somewhere along the line that thread goes bad if it's exposed to too much air, so I keep my thread in baggies. So that's what this is. I'm going to put this over by the machine. And we have our binding strips all cut. That's what this is. So we've got those ready to go. They are 2.5 inches wide. Then we just have some scraps here. Some of these were pieces we've cut along the way for different reasons. And this is the fabric that I have left over based on the yardage that I suggested in the first part of this video. So there is quite a bit of fabric left over. Still debating on if I want to make a smaller version of this. Where did my pattern go? I don't know what I did with my pattern. It is missing. Well, I'm sure I'll find it at some point in time. I did another quilt over the weekend, so I didn't have this all set up. Usually I leave everything as it is because I can get stuff done in 3 parts. Sorry, I digress. So needless to say, today's activities involve, the first activity we need to do is we need to get the quilt sandwich put together. I'm going to remove this from my design wall and set it over here. And this is my backing fabric. So it was 108 inches wide, and I did buy, I believe, 3 yards of this, and it was more than I needed because I wasn't paying attention to the fact that it was 108-inch fabric. This quilt will... Wow, this might not work. I've done it before. But this fabric does seem kind of heavy. And it does not want to stick to the design wall. Nope, it's not going to work. Okay. Sorry. Done that a million times. Never had a problem. Usually I can stick this up there. So the finished size of this quilt is 48 inches by 48 inches, which a typical lap quilt, wheelchair quilt, whatever you want to term you want to use for it, that is about usually 36 by 48. A little, if it's going to be used for a wheelchair, you want it just a little bit narrower so that it can tuck in without having too many problems. Oh. Hold on. Can you hear me now? I am so sorry about that. Forgot to change out my batteries this morning. So everything I've done thus far has been a complete waste of time because nothing's worked the way I wanted it to. So we're good. We're gonna get this sandwich going now. Hopefully, I don't know how much you missed when the microphone died, probably very shortly after I started, but it was working before I started the video. So since my backing doesn't want to hang out on my design wall, we're going to use the table, which means we need to get extra fabric out of the way, and we need to get our cutting board out of the way. Okay, we now have a larger area. It's still not as large as I need because, as I said, you probably didn't hear, the finished size of this quilt was 48 by 48 inches. 48 inches by 48 inches. Standard lap quilt is going to be a 36 by 48. Well, that's the minimum. And this particular one is just, it's a little wider. So it's not probably going to work very well for a wheelchair quilt. A wheelchair quilt, you do want to keep part of it at the 36 inches. That way it does drape and tuck into the wheelchair reasonably well. But we're going to do this. So I cut from my backing fabric a 50-inch square. That gives me 1 inch of space on either side, because the square is 48 inches square. And there. So we've got that. So I'm putting the backing down on my table. And my table is only just under 36 inches wide. So we're not going to be able to do everything all at once. We're going to have to do things in stages. There are a large number of things you can do to put a quilt together. I am going to use a spray adhesive. I haven't had any problems with that. You don't put on a big layer of it. You put on a light layer. So I ironed my backing fabric, got it all ironed out, and I've actually had it hanging around for 4 days now. The cat was very concerned about what it was, so, well, one of them was. And then now I've also got a 50 by 50 inch piece of batting. This happens to be Warm and Natural 100% cotton batting. You can use whatever you want. I use cotton fabric, cotton batting, and cotton thread. But if you have polyester, not gonna hurt anything. Spray on a little bit of your spray adhesive. Find the corner of your batting. And the adhesive does not adhere permanently right away. So you can start by moving it out. And that's why I'm doing it, because of the fact that it's bigger than my table. I started in my corner, and I can then flatten things out and move things away. This is where it started to adhere, so that's fine. Just a little more adhesive. Again, don't go crazy with this stuff. And now I'm going to continue. Like I said, it's not permanently adhesive. It adhered, so adjust. All right, so now we're going to go back over to this side. I'm going to lift up our batting. until we get to the point where the adhesive starts. And put a little more on. And now pull it down. Flattening as we go, making sure everything is straight. Over. Caught on the other table. Now, if you've watched any of my other videos before, you're going, you've never used spray adhesive before. This is weird. What are you doing? I've never videoed a quilt of this size. When they're smaller, you don't have to do this. You get your safety pins, you're golden. Because of the size of this quilt, I have to do something else to ensure that it stays together and flat. And the way I do it is to use the spray adhesive. The easiest way to do it is to send it out to someone who has a long arm machine, and you just give them the stuff and they take care of it all for you. All right. We're almost there. All right, we have our batting and our backing attached to each other. That's step one. Now we have to take our top and get it attached. Come on, there we go. And we're going to do this in a very similar fashion, but I want to make sure that I have enough fabric on each side before I start sticking. Place it around a little bit. You don't want any of the edges to go off the side. Okay. And we're having all this fun right now just getting it the sandwich put together. Imagine what kind of fun we're gonna have when we get over to the sewing machine. Oops. Dropped it on the floor. We're getting there. Alright, I'm going to need a little more space, so I've got to move stuff that you can't see off this table. I'm not going to be using my ironing board today, so we'll put our rulers right over here. Actually, I might be using it later, but we can move the rulers again then. Okay. So now let's scooch this on down. There we go. Give myself a little bit more workspace. And this is not going to work. Alright, so I am short on fabric and batting on this side. I thought it was going to be fine. It looked fine at first. I was wrong. So I'm going to need to put this as close to it as I can. Okay, so we're going to go back over here to our first corner. And I'm actually going to rotate this around so that I can access this corner easily. And as I said, not a permanent adhesive. I'm going to put this right on the edge of the fabric, or of the batting. There we go. Let's do that. I need to move this table over a little bit. There we go. So I have a little more space between the two tables. Okay, try this. Let's try. See if we can get this to fit correctly. took some effort. Oops, I'm moving the table. Don't mean to be moving the table. Got the wheels locked. I don't know why the table's moving. There we go. We now have our sandwich. Wow, that took some work. I need some water after that. Where's my water? Whew. There's my water. All right. Finally. And now I want to put the design that I want on the quilt. I am not going to do free motion. I'm not that talented yet. I am working on it, but it is not something that I am willing to share with all of you yet. So I've decided that I am going to do squares of the squares. Sounds basic, sounds standard, nothing complicated. I need a Frixion pen. So this is why we might be using the iron later on, because I will probably want to iron out these lines. And I am going to do inside the square, I'm going to do a square, but the points are going to be in the middle. So that means it'll be a 45-degree angle. And I need to figure out, let's see, it's a 12-inch square, right? 12-inch square, so I need 6 inches. So I mark where 6 inches is on all 4 sides. Now, I can do it on 2. And then I'm going to use my 45-degree angle line on my ruler. I'm going to match up the 45 on one of the side seams. And then I'm going to match up my ruler with where my 6-inch mark is. And then I draw a line. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. But now I should be able to just match up. Well, now I'm going to match up where the line meets. I got kitty fur on my nails. Probably because of that spray adhesive. I'm going to match up where the line ends over here to my 6-inch mark here. And then the 45 off of the point. And last but not least, join up these 2 points. So now I have a square that I'm going to quilt right there. And debated long and hard about it. And I think I'm going to do stitch in the ditch. And then the square there. And then here's where the debating came in. Well, sorry, let me finish these lines first. So the batting I am using can have no more than 10 inches between stitches. And this is 8 3/4. There are other battings that can have no more than 8 inches. There's some, it says on the package, sorry, I've got multiple battings over in that direction of the room. It says on the package how many inches you can have between your quilts. The reason for this is because it's going to cause the potential for the quilt, the batting, to bunch up with use. And if you have your quilting spaced too far apart, then that batting it has the potential to get messed up. So I keep going back and forth about whether I want to do another square. I think I do. I think I want to do another square at this point on the dark green. Well, it's not dark, it's medium, but so let me see. Oops. Oh, what I'm doing is I'm matching up the seams and the point of the inner triangle to find out where my other points should go. Alright, so now for this point to point. And that's what I was afraid of. This one cuts into that square. I think I'm okay though. I don't think I did hate it. So now there's a square at 3 inches apart, and this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 inches. Do I put another one in? It's going to be a lot of squares. No, that's too close. That's not going to work. Come on, heat up. Oh, I can iron on this right now because there's batting underneath, and the batting is the same thing you use on there, so I'm not going to burn my table or anything like that. Come on. It's not heating up very fast. There we go. Oh, I read something on Facebook that said that these Frixion pens, if you live in a very cold climate, when it cools down outside, you have the potential for the lines to come back. So, FYI, apparently the lines can come back from these pens if you're in a really cold climate. All right, let me fix this line back up. So the only way to do this and make it not look really weird. And I still think that would look weird, is to put it 3 inches out from that line. Yeah, it's not as weird looking as I thought it was going to be. One, two, three, there we go. Why aren't we working right? I don't know what happened there. Oh, I just drew the line too long. That's simple. All right. So now that I have this decided, I don't have to draw any more lines, because I can set my guide on my walking foot to be 3 inches. So I'll do the center square and then as I go out. This works. Yep, I can live with that. All right. So now we need to go over to the machine. And first thing we need to do is we need to switch out the thread that I have on here, which was for a different project. And get my green on here. And it looks like I have a decent chunk of thread still left. Okay, I've got... Bobbin looks fairly full, so I'm not going to worry about it. Yes, my machine does have an automatic needle threader, but every time I take it in for service and they fix it, probably, 3 months later, something like that, I end up bending the metal piece again, so I just don't mess with it. Can I do 3 inches? That is something I should check on before I get going here, because if I do need to put... Yes, that is the maximum it will do, but it will do 3 inches. There we go. Okay. Get that out of the way. And now I need the quilt. And we're going to roll this up so we can get it inside. I don't know what I'm messing with back there. There is a bobbin of some kind back here that's got a thread. Ah, there we are. It's all the way over here. That got really caught over there. Okay. Needle down position. I am not changing my stitch length or anything. I'm leaving it just as is. And yes, I am using a needle a second time, but the last project I quilted was very small. There was a very small amount of quilting on it, and therefore I do not feel at all guilty about using the needle a second time. It should be just fine. Gravity was working against me there. Out one more stitch. There we go. Remember to try and keep as much of this up and loose as possible, or gravity will cause your stitches to get really close together. Alright, I'm going to go back this way and do this here. Well, let's think now. If I'm going to be using this doohickey, got to turn it all this way. And that's going to be annoying. Yeah, we're probably going to pull this out and draw more lines on it, because using this doohickey is not going to work. Let's just get this quilting done. and then we'll worry about it. These stitches are too close together. Just raise that up. let's go back over here. Got a bunch of the squares quilted. And we still have quite a ways along here that we need quilted. So we'll pull out the ruler and get the pen back out. Where did I go? I went to the medium. Not the right spot to go to. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 inches out. 1, 2, 3. Yep, the medium is the point to go to. And actually, before I do that, let's do this. And then 3 inches out from there. Here. And we're not going to do 3 inches. We're going to do the edge of here, which is not 3 inches, but it'll work. Then we'll go back to the 3 inches. Just for consistency's sake. There we go. Okay, so now let's go back over here. Now we'll do this edge. That square. Now this starts our no more squares, because they're not going to actually meet up. They're going to go off of the edge of the quilt. And then this one we're going to line up with the edge of the square here. And then we go back to 3 inches. side corner's done. Go. Let's see here. Almost done drawing lines. Did I miss something here? No, it's just not on the same. Yeah, I did. I forgot a line. There we go. All right. Now we're going to have our exploding squares. Let's go back to the machine. Ooh, water's good. Oops. So one of these is a square, and then the rest of them are just lines. So let's do the square, and then we'll do each corner individually. have a new camera coming, not next week, but the next week we will have fresh cameras. All right, let's see. I don't want it zoomed in, I want to zoom it out. Come on. Zoom all the way out. There we go. There we go. Sorry about that. It was probably going on for a long time because I've been paying attention to this quilting instead of paying attention to the camera. I apologize. But again, new cameras are arriving shortly. I believe they were in New Zealand when last I checked. Of course, all I'm doing right now is sewing in a straight line, so you didn't miss much. Nope, the camera messed up again. Last one. Alright. Let's get this done. I need the iron to heat up. Let's see, we've got spots to trim on the top. Now we're going to have more to trim on the bottom, but for right now this is good. And just for your information, if you are enjoying seeing me do a quilt of this size and want to see more of quilts of this size, you're going to need to find someone else to watch, because this is the last time I'm doing anything of this size. I may remake this in a smaller size because I have more than enough fabric, and I'm thinking that I might make it in a 12 by or 24 by 24 instead of the 48. So the pattern I used, I'm just going to shrink everything down to 1 inch instead of 2 inches. But yes, I will not be doing a quilt of this size again. It does not work well until I get a long arm, because the area that I'm using, I need all of my machines out that I have on my countertop, because I do other things other than quilt, and so I need the other machines for those, for my garment sewing, and trying to manipulate this size quilt around underneath. It's not underneath the machine's not the problem. It's the area around my machine that was causing me headaches. So I will not be doing a quilt of this size again. And I should have known that. I knew it. I knew I didn't want to like them this big, but I tried. And I mentioned earlier the batting is protecting my table from getting scorched, so I can iron here. All I'm doing is getting rid of the lines that I used to draw, or that I draw that I drew in order to follow with my quilting. Let's see if I get all of that. Come on. This corner. Get them up in that corner. Something just dawned on me, and I wonder if this would work. I wonder if I could throw this in the dryer on high heat. I might have to try that on something when I'm not on camera. That would be a lot easier than going through all this. And one more corner. All right, cutting board. Whoops. I had issues earlier getting, oh, this has got pins in it. It's over there. Hopefully I don't have any anywhere else. I had issues earlier. You saw me trying to get this all squared up on the batting. It appears that somehow the batting that I know I swear I cut to 50 inches is not there. So there are points where I don't have batting under the edge of this quilt. To solve that problem, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trim the quilt down. So the last border, this outside light green border, is no longer going to finish to 2.5 inches. It's going to finish to something smaller, which I have to measure right now. What did I do with my rotary cutter? There you are. Looks like I need to cut off 1 inch, so I'm going to have it be 1.25 inches from the seam. And that'll work. That won't look bad. So normally I would just be truing up the backing and the batting to go with the top. What I'm doing is I'm actually cutting off part of the top because I had issues getting things all lined up. I have actually seen people that do this on purpose. They cut their last outside border too big, and that way when they trim things up, it all matches. I've never done that. I just do my final border to the size I want it. But like I said, in this case, I've got a batting issue, and I'm just going to solve it this way. Last side. Alrighty. Big ruler away. And let's see, is this going to be too heavy? Alright, let's look. Alright, I can see the quilting, and I do like it. It emphasizes the squares, and it looks like on the screen you can see it also. So that worked out well. Alright. So as you can see, I trimmed down this border. It's no longer the same width as this. It's now narrower. And we need to now move on to our binding. We cut the binding 2.5 inches wide. And how's the camera doing over there? Camera's being fussy over there. That one's not a full length. That one's not a full length. This is longer, but still it doesn't look like this full length. There we go. That's a salvage to salvage piece. Okay. Since I cut some of these other pieces, and I have some salvage to salvage, I don't want to have all of the short pieces at the same time. So I want to intermingle the full pieces, the full length with the short lengths. And just to tell myself where I want to do that, I'm gonna like join them now. If you've got all the same length, you don't need to mess with this part. This is just me not wanting everything to be the same. So this is one of my shorter pieces, and then this is a full size. So then I'll put another shorter piece here. Which will attach to a full length. Which we will attach to a shorter. Full length. And shorter. And I forgot to do something before I started this activity. Alright, so I have them sorted. I know where I want them. Now I need to put my rulers back where they belong. So that I can get to my ironing board. Ooh. Because this fabric does not have a right side and a wrong side. I mean, technically it does, but it's very hard to figure out what it is. In that case, you need to iron them in half before you take them over to the machine to put them together to make one long strip. Otherwise, we will end up with pieces back and forth and not connected correctly. So I'm keeping the pins in so that I know which pieces go where, but I am going to iron and I want to keep that there because I know that's the piece I want to attach it to after the fact. So you just fold the binding in half. And again, I'm using 2.5 inches. Some people use 2 1/4. On the last quilt I did, I used 2 1/4 and it worked out fine. I've used 2 1/4 inches in the past and had a terrible time. So I guess it was a much smaller piece. So maybe that was the point, why it was easier. I don't know. There we go. Okay, that piece is going to go over here. You stay there. Bring this up. I know that gets attached to that piece. Where'd that pin go? There it is. Those two get joined together. If this fabric hadn't been, or had been very obvious which side was right and which side was wrong, I wouldn't need to be doing this. But if we don't do it before we start joining the fabric together to make one long strip, then the strips could be joined upside down, a wrong side to a right side, instead of right side to right side. And if that happens, then the binding's messed up and you've got to start over. And I kind of really don't want to do that. I've had enough issues with this quilt today. I don't want to do any more issues with it. I am frustrated with it. I don't know how if you've ever felt that way, but This is one of those things where if it wasn't for the fact that I've got this camera going and I've got to finish this for you folks, I would probably have tossed this thing in the garbage earlier, a couple hours ago. It's got me that frustrated. But having the camera running and having it posted out there is forcing me to do something that I normally wouldn't do. This is actually a good thing. It's like therapy. Don't get angry and frustrated with it. Just finish it. You can do it. It's almost done. And once it is done, no one's going to know the troubles I had with it. And my camera on my sewing machine is still being fussy. I don't know what its problem is today, but it just does not want to stay zoomed out. It wants to zoom in. All on its own. This is the last one. Woohoo! Because we're going to have to do all this all over again. I mean, they'll be easier to press the next time after we get them connected, but still, we do have to press them all over again. The whole strip. Oops, that side doesn't want to stay down. Okay, let's do this. And yes, it is messed up. We're going to come over here and fix it again. Let's see here. Take you down. Okay. So now the reason we had to fold, first of all, I'm leaving my walking foot on. It's not going to hurt anything. There are people that sew with their walking feet on all the time, so it's not going to hurt anything. The reason we had to iron it was because now we know that the side that pops up here is the right side of the fabric, and we need to match up the right sides of the fabric together. So right side to right side. And we're going to sew them together at an angle. If we just stitched them together straight, when you fold the binding over the quilt, you're going to have one long seam all the way around. So you're going to have a really big, bulky seam in one spot. This way, if we're sewing at an angle, we're going to spread out the seam over the course of the fabric. If you prefer, you can draw a line on this top piece of fabric. You're welcome to do that. I don't, but you're welcome to. I do need to lower my stitch length back down to normal stitch length, and I'm leaving the quilting needle on. I'm not changing any of this out. I'm just not dealing with it. There's no real reason to mess with it. You don't want to go from the inside of the V to the outside. That will cause your seam to go the wrong direction, and then this won't work. So across the V. Yeah, we're not stitching. No. Let me reset the bobbin thread. We're almost out of bobbin thread. Before we put the binding on, we are definitely going to have to refill that bobbin. But hopefully we can get through these. Let's try this again. Line it up. Okay. Hey, the camera made it all the way through that one. Excellent. So this next step can be done multiple ways. I have a problem with seeing the 1/4 of an inch correctly, so I like to do it with a ruler. I've recorded other videos where I've done it just with a pair of scissors, which you can do. But now we have all this extra fabric in our area, in the binding. So we need to get rid of it, and you can just take a pair of scissors and cut it off. I tend to not see the 1/4 of an inch correctly, so I am going to use a rotary cutter. There we go. The ruler away. And now we press the binding again. Told you we were going to have to press it a second time. And I mean, you don't have to actually press all of it. You just need to press where you joined it. You're going to press the seams open. You know, everywhere else we've been pressing to one side or the other. In binding, you actually press them open. And again, this relates to the fact that you want to spread out the bulk of the fabric as best you can. So once you press the seams open, then you fold your binding back up and press it in half. And that will cause that now you've got a seam that goes at an angle, and it spreads out all the fabric. Also gives you these little wings, which you want to trim off. Okay, where's my next seam? There it is. Pressing it open. folding it in half. And I've heard these called wings, and I've heard them called ears. So whatever you want to call them, that's fine. Just trim them off. Make them go away. Wow, busy road out there right now. There were like 5 cars. Here comes another one. There, is that our last seam? This is our last seam. All right. Binding. I'm gonna run out of water today. I want to see how much this actually finished to. And a lot of times after you quilt, it will be a different size than when you start it. There we go. So we are at 47 inches. Seriously? That's 46 and a half. And that's 47. We're not square anymore. I don't know what happened. I have no idea what happened. So let me add those numbers together though real quick. 46 and a half. 46 and a half is 83. And 47 plus 47 is 90. That's 93. 93. There we go. And that's 94. That makes sense. 7. 187. Alright, so let's make sure we have enough binding. So I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, almost. So I have 35 times 6. That's 30, 18, 19, 20, 21. So I need 187 inches, and it looks like I have 210. So I have more than enough binding to go around this quilt. So how's the sewing machine doing? Hey, the sewing machine camera seems to be working. Let's move over there. Oops, there goes my microphone. Still on? Still on. When putting on binding, you do not want to start on a corner. You want to start in the middle, or thereabouts. There it is. Where's the edge of this? Logic being that if you start towards the middle, you have room to do your joining of your ends later on. Alright, so there we go. I am leaving my stitch length a little shot, or at the standard, and I'm going to use quite a bit off to the side, or that I'm going to keep extra. We're going to use that later on. And now get it all lined up, and I am going to use, dang it, sorry, microphone's being difficult today too. There we go. I'm going to knot the thread at the beginning, because later on when we have to join the two ends of the binding together, it's going to be very challenging, and so we need to have that extra fix so that the seam doesn't tear. And you want to keep your binding. That just fell all over the floor. I won't get caught underneath the wheels of my chair there. All right, you want to keep your binding, edge of your binding, and your sandwich, quilt sandwich, together. And you're stitching at 1/4 of an inch seam. And my hassle is this stuff over here, because I have the sewing machine here, I have other things over there. This is the area that I don't really want to move things from, but in order to quilt this properly and not have a hassle, I should clean up, get rid of those machines. Like I said, I use those for other things at other times, and moving things back and forth is not something I want to do. I want my sewing room to function for me, and at this point in time it's just not going to, because I don't have enough space. That being said, I can appreciate all of you that are sewing on kitchen tables and have to clean things up all the time. Been there, done that. I want to be past that point in life, and still I'm running into challenges. Coming up to the corner here, make sure your quilt is flat, and we're going to come up. I happen to have a foot that tells me where 1/4 of an inch is. It's got a line on it that tells me where I'm at. So I put my stiletto. If you don't have one of these, just use a chopstick or anything pointy, so that you can get the quilt, the edge of the quilt, at 1/4 of an inch. And then you turn your quilt. Come on, there we go. Turn your quilt and sew off the edge. Now we bring everything back around. And again, we're going to use my little tool here. And you flip the fabric around. So you've got the fabric here. Flip it around so that your stiletto or whatever tool you're using is even with the edge of the quilt that you just did. And then the other part is down along the side. And go underneath. And start sewing again. bobbin thread. I knew that. Alright. By the way, you do not have to use the same color bobbin thread on the bottom and as on the top. You can use two different colored threads if you'd like. Winding a bobbin, never do it at top speed. When I worked at the sewing machine company, I cannot tell you how many times I had people bring in their machines with the bobbin stuck on there. All right, wonderful. Oops. I heard a pin pop. There we go. What's going on here? All right, what are we caught on? Ah, that's what we're caught on. Dang it. Silly, silly microphone thing. There we go. Maybe that'll stay. Guess I can't wear these pants anymore when I do this because there's nowhere to put the microphone. Where's the edge? There's the corner. Turn the quilt. Sew off the edge. So what happened on the last corner was this piece of thread got caught on this piece that I have here. It's not, you need to try and, bleh. When you do this, you want to make sure that the thread stays down below. I was not concentrating very well on that and it popped up. So just make sure it stays down, and that way it won't get caught on anything. Caught on the table. I put that away? I need that. So how far am I gonna sew? No ways. Alright, so now I have all this extra binding. What I need, I'm going to trim this down so it fits in there. And I need 2.5 inches of overlap. Not from here, not from here, of overlap. So I'm going to measure from, this is the piece underneath, this is the piece on the top. Top piece is what I'm going to cut. And from the edge of the cut piece to 2.5 inches. That's where I want to cut. If I was using 2¼ inch binding, I would cut at 2¼ inches. So however wide the binding is, that's how much you cut. That's how much the overlap needs to be. Again, overlap, not from one of the seams you stitched. The overlap of the fabric. I have done that wrong many times, which is why I'm telling you multiple times. And we're going to join these just like we've joined all the other ones earlier, except now we have to deal with all of the fabric of the quilt. Not wanting to let us do what we want to do. I find this challenging every time I do it, just for your efforts. Doesn't get any easier no matter how many times you do it. Keep it straight. And if you are so inclined, you can take this over to the cutting table and trim it off like I did before, which is probably the better way to do it, but I never do. I'm going to try and sort of finger press the seam a little bit, but it's going to be challenging, so I'm going to mess with it. And now you see we have just enough binding to finish our quilt. Okay. We are so close. There, in case I do decide to make that smaller quilt. I already have some binding made up. That's good. So something I read recently in a tips and tricks section was after you get your binding on, to press it. I've never done that before, but I'm going to try it here. That off to the side. So pressing it out. Iron's not hot, forgot. The reason for this was supposedly that it gives you better coverage or something like that. I don't know. It makes the binding not bubble. It was something along those lines. Not certain what I'm supposed to be doing at the corner, so I just sort of avoided it a little bit. Now what I can say, as I've been doing that, is I do feel more comfortable putting less clips in on. Yeah, I don't feel like I need a clip every 2 feet or 2 inches. I can go a further distance and have this feel like it's going to stay in place while I sew. You know, kind of nice. Don't know if if the step is necessary or not. Guess it's a personal preference. And yes, I am going to be bad, and I am going to sew this on. I'm going to stitch in the ditch and sew this binding on that way. I am not going to hand sew my binding. I never do. I shouldn't say that. I think I did on some of my first quilts, but since then I do not. Now make sure your corners, when you fold over the miter fold, you fold in the direction you're going to be stitching. So we're going to be stitching that way, so the fold goes that way so that it doesn't get messed up later on. Come on, there we go. Whew. All right, we're all clipped. How is the sewing machine camera doing? It seems to be behaving. Over there. Excellent. And again, we will not start on a corner. We're going to start in the middle somewhere. And we're going to pray that I don't lose half of these clips sunk somewhere. All right. Now, increase stitch length. We're going to do stitch in the ditch. off there. Come on. Obviously lost a bunch of clips because this whole area is open. There's clips hidden away over there somewhere. Dang it. Stay in the ditch. Almost, yes, we're almost there. Now I am going to clean up the back of the quilt. Some little tails hanging here and there. Got something on my phone. I don't know what it was, but I got something on my phone. So that's the back of the quilt. All you can see are the squares. And I probably could have gotten away with a 2 1/4 inch binding. With the way that we did that, where we pressed it, I think it folded over more than it normally does, and there's quite a bit of extra binding along this quilt. But let's see how it turned out. All right, let's step back. I like it. I like using that binding instead of, because I thought about using the light green as the binding so it would all just blend in, but I think I like the contrast. I like the way it brings out the squares. I like the way I quilted it. I think that it, even though it's a very simple quilt job, it came out quite nicely. I'm not crazy about this center square. There's quilting here, but from a distance you can't see it. All the other ones, obviously, because it's on different colored fabrics, you can see it, but that square you can't. I'm almost wondering if I shouldn't have used a white or something else that would contrast and make that square pop really, really strong. And I could even have actually gone in and made a bunch of different squares. But that's it. So the last thing we always have to do, and this I will not force you to watch me do it, I will put it on later, always put a label on your quilt. I had these made from a place called labelweavers.com, and they have handcrafted by Carol Crafty Grandma, wash, gentle, cycle. Brings up a point of whether you should pre-wash or not pre-wash your fabric. I do not pre-wash my fabric, but I also use a product called it's called a color sheet, and it goes into my washer and it sucks up any colors that would otherwise get into. So say a red sweater and a white sock go in and you end up with a pink sock because the red sweater bled into the sock. This color sheet sucks up that color and keeps the white sock from becoming a pink sock. So I don't know about you, that's just the way I do it, and I have to say, turned out pretty well. It was not one of my favorite projects. Towards this last today episode, did not enjoy the quilting of this. There's just not enough room over there for me to do anything of this size. So until I determine that machine's not necessary, which it is because I still have clothes to make, and that's what I use my brother machine to make clothes, and that's why it's sitting there. And next to it is a serger, which goes along with the making of the clothes. So I will not be doing anything this large again. I do believe I have enough fabric. I'm going to measure it out and make sure, but I really do believe I'm going to make this in half the size. I'm going to take the same pattern that I used, but I'm just going to make it, instead of cutting 2.5 inch strips, cutting those to 1.5 and minimizing everything down and making it smaller. And then I might play around with some different quilting techniques in the middle. But All right, I know we're about 45 minutes ahead of schedule, or ahead of when I normally stop, but I just don't see any reason in starting a new project, and I don't have anything that I could put together in 45 minutes. So we're going to call it a day. Thank you for watching, and we will see you again next time with, oh, forgot, like, subscribe, follow, get reminders, whichever platform you're using. Do whatever you need to do to be able to find me next time, because tomorrow we are going to be making pot holders and using some applique techniques and a buttonhole and a buttonholer. A couple different things we're going to be doing. So we'll see you.